Folks, my internet has been down for the past 2 days or so, so we're going to be trying to get through this video, and it's going to be uploaded and all those sorts of good things on my cellular data, so things may take longer to load. We'll see how it goes. We are talking about everybody's favorite starter champion today, and that is, of course, going to be Galek. Now, there's a little bit of sarcasm there. Galek is debatably the least enjoyable of the 4 starting characters, the least endgame viable of the 4 starting characters. However, he is actually the starting champion that I picked when I first started this game of Raid Shadow Legends, roughly like 5.5 years ago now at this point, because, you know, he was the face of the game. He was all over the promo art. You'd see him in all the ads. He was, you know, looked pretty badass as far as everything went. His skills looked pretty decent at the time as well. So I was kind of enamored with this guy, and I said, hey, you know what? We're going to try the Orc. I'm usually more of like a ranged character, so I was thinking like Elhain. You know, I might like some magic too, so I was thinking like Kale, but I was like, you know what? We'll switch it up. We'll go with the melee build. Anyways, Galek didn't last very long on my account. I got him up to 5 stars, and then I actually fed him to make somebody else a 6-star, ironically. I forget who it was. It might have been like Elva or something like that. I pulled her fairly early on. But now, we've kind of come full circle because I do have a Galek on my account, and I pulled a 5-star soul for him. So I'm going to be going ahead and taking a look at Galek here in the big 2025, and we're going to be seeing if he's any decent. So let's go ahead and familiarize ourselves with our kits. First of all, it's interesting. All of his icons on his skills look very like fiery, flamey, and all those sorts of good things. He doesn't bring any sort of burn or anything like that to his kit. He has an A1, simple, you know, it's cross/slash attack one enemy 2 times, damage based on attack, as with all of the rares, of course. Hellraiser, A2, AoE, extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, places an increased speed on himself for 2 turns. What's cool about this is obviously if you only have 85% crit rate, this is still going to be an AoE crit, and then obviously he gets the increased speed, and you don't need any books in it to get it down in terms of cooldown, so it just starts off at 3 turns, which is pretty nice. And finally, Cursed Blade, A3, attacks 4 times at random, has a 30 books to 40% chance of placing the small version of decreased defense, has a 40% chance of placing the big version of decreased defense for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs. So you need somebody to go before this guy to place at least 2 debuffs, because he doesn't bring any other debuffs inside his kit, right? So you need to have somebody else go first. And if we think about this logically, if you have a debuffer who's going before this guy, what are they likely to be placing? Well, debuffers, most of the time, you're going to run, say, for example, a War Maiden, or as I recommend, a Fencer. They place decreased defense, right? Why would you need him to place the decreased defense if they already have 2 debuffs? It just doesn't make any sense. Or a HP in all battles by 15%. Now, we do have the 5-star Awakening on him. I would recommend running him inside Phantom Touch. Phantom Touch is going to give him, essentially, at this Awakening level, a 75% chance of inflicting bonus damage, which is proportional to his attack, which is quite nice, especially if you're trying to run him inside, like, Fire Knight or something like that, because that is kind of the one bonus to him with all this multi-hit capabilities. He can be very, very good at helping to bust down that shield very quickly on the Fire Knight, which is something I noticed. Masteries, I literally just have him built out inside the Mastery so far that ups his crit rate. Now, I have him in some, like, ridiculously broken endgame viable gear that's on my Sun Wukong whenever he's running for nukes. So I didn't want to also put masteries on him to make him look even more insane, right? Because realistically, the players I think that are going to watch a Galek video are the players who just got him, just pulled him, aren't too familiar with the game, or hell, maybe it's just people looking for entertainment. Either way, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe, join the Discord, all that sort of good stuff. Discord's linked down below. But that being said, I want to showcase it in, you know, a way that people can kind of relate to it. So I have crazy gear on him, yes, but I have no masteries. I also have no relic, right? So if you can get either of those things on him, you are good to go. And I also kind of want to showcase it, yes, in the way that you can get an idea out of it, but also, you know, basically as cracked out as you can possibly be. How is he going to perform, right? So the stats that we have on him is 37k HP, 4400 on the attack. Now this guy has god-awfully low base attack at 1200. I think that might be lower than even some of the other starter champions. I do not recall off the top of my head, to be honest. Elhain has 1233, so she's got 33 higher attack. We have Dark Elves. We have Kale down here somewhere. Kale has 1200 as well. It seems low, but that might just be anecdotally, right? Because I know rares are significantly lower, but it could also just be his multipliers, because my god, he does not seem to hit incredibly hard, especially when you compare him to some of the other champions. So, and you'd think I'd be biased in his favor, but unfortunately I'm not. So, that being said, this is how the gear looks. We got a pretty much perfect piece from Lethal here. We're running him inside Lethal and Perception. This is not min-maxed gear by any stretch of the imagination, but it also just happens to be the very best gear that I have on my account in terms of damage dealing. So that's how it looks. And if you are fairly new to the game and you're just blown away by these stats, first of all, my account is not that good. You're going to be here one day as well. And second of all, at once upon a time, I was in the exact same situation. So I hear you. Just keep grinding. This game is all about grinding after all. So make sure to you know, play it as often as you can and whatnot. I'm not a Plarium representative, but I'm sure that's what they'd want me to say anyways. And I'm trying to make it into the content creator program here, guys. So, gotta stay on their good graces, I guess. We're going to bring in an Arbiter. And we're also going to bring in our Lydia, wherever she might be. This really messes with me because I'm used to finding champions on mobile. And on mobile, they only have the 2 layers of champions at this point. So having the 3rd layer added on via PC here is a little bit disorienting to say the least. So we'll take it off auto. We'll come in, we'll speed boost, and then we'll get our Lydia to come in. He is ridiculously fast, obviously, too, so his build is just insane. Let's go ahead and hit the AoE first. So the Hellraiser, boom, AoE, doing about 95k, right? Like, it's a decent little smack for a rare champion, certainly on stage 20 of Dragon's Lair. But in the level of gear that he's in, this is certainly not a rare champion that's going to make it into all of your endgame, you know, content, right? So, in terms of the speed, we have him at 284, 100, and then 268 on the crit rate and crit damage. This guy has 300 resistance, 207 accuracy, so he's landing his debuffs and whatnot. Let's go ahead, let's try the A3 here as well, and the A1, and just see what kind of damage they can do. We're going to do a full, extensive testing of our boy, Galek. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to head in with the A3. Boom! About 31 to 37k per hit is what I was seeing, so definitely, you know, it's okay. We're going to go ahead and just keep cycling here, essentially, because, you know, he's so fast, and we'll probably get back around to the A1 before anybody gets a go. So, attacks one enemy 2 times. We're going to go ahead and hit in on the Apothecary here. Boom, boom. We hit him for about 34k and then 21k. The 21k was actually a proc coming in from the Phantom Touch. So, on his A1... at least, he has some very, very solid damage there. Let's go ahead and let's go back to his kit now, and we're going to talk about how you want to build him and the things that you're looking for. So, you know, content creators, I made a post about this not too long ago on my community page of YouTube, but they oftentimes don't offer actual relevant advice for most players, so we're going to do that here now. What are you looking for on your Galek? Well, first of all, in the very early game, you're most likely going to be using a lifesteal set with as much crit rate and attack and speed and all that sort of good stuff that you can get on him, right? I would not prioritize accuracy on him because generally, 9 times out of 10, the champions that you run him with are going to be who you're depending on for those decreased defenses, right? You don't want to be depending on his decreased defense because it's not the big version, it's not consistent, and it's going to take away from a lot of your other stats. So, you know, however much accuracy you put into him, that has to come out of attack, or it has to come out of speed, or crit rate, or crit damage, or, you know, HP, right? So don't necessarily build him, excuse me, by the way, don't necessarily build him with accuracy. Just try to get him crit capped, first of all, if you can. Don't worry so much about your crit damage off the start of the game, because crit damage does not matter if the attack is not a critical anyway. So having, you know, 200% crit damage doesn't do you any good if his crit rate is only 15%. So make sure to get that crit rate maxed out. Then after that, you're really looking for attack, you're looking for speed, HP, crit damage, and then maybe some accuracy, and pretty much in that order, I think. In terms of sets, once you're ready to graduate from the, you know, lifesteal set that you start with, a very, very good set to put him in is going to be Savage, obviously just ignoring the defense if you still have him on your account at that point. New players these days also have the choice to start with Supreme Galek, who's just better in every way, or you have the option to start with Sun Wukong as well, who's just simply better in every way. So if you have those, you know, maybe focus on them instead of this guy. But, you know, if you choose to build this guy, those are the stats you're going with. Sets, you're looking for Savage. Lethal is obviously a fantastic way to go. Any sort of a damage-dealing set. So, Merciless, Slayer, those sorts of things are going to be great on him as well if you progress that far in the game. Granted, if you've gotten far enough to have a good Merciless set, you're probably not running Galek inside your teams, right? So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to note, though, is that in today's meta, he is a rare champion, which is important because it's a lot easier, obviously, to get awakenings, especially high awakenings for rare champions. And inside the city of Centranos, oftentimes there's awaken stages where you need to have certain levels of awakening on your champions to actually be able to even participate, right? So you don't necessarily have to have him built, but if you have a 3-star or a 5-star Galek or a, you know, a 6-star Galek that's built to that level at least and can participate in the battle, he can be naked. Doesn't matter. He's giving you those stars that you might need to start the battle, right? So if we go and look at the Cursed City here, and if we look at like S23, I need 20 stars just to participate in this particular battle. So my Galek alone, he can't be in this one, I don't think. But my Galek alone would make it so that I only need 15 extra stars spread out over 4 different champions, which is a very good ratio, right? Like, that's not bad at all. That's a lot better than needing 20 stars spread out over 5 champions, in my opinion, right? It just gives you so many more options on your team. And then obviously, during these free gear events and whatnot, if you need to push Faction Wars, if you need to push Cursed City, if you're just trying to switch something up in the arena, you know, he can definitely be useful there as well. If we look inside the Orc faction, they are probably... it's pretty desolate here, man. We got, like, very little support. We got very little DPS. We got very little just good champions as a whole. So, you know, Galek can actually be a very viable option if you're doing any orc-specific content. So if you have like an orc-specific, you know, siege that you're trying to do, like a siege defense, you can put him in some stone skin. You can run him inside there. That's more for like the end game players, obviously, right? Make it a rare orcs only if you can, or, you know, just orcs only. He might be able to help out. He's obviously good, like, again, like I said, for pushing Faction Wars. He could be decent for Faction Wars hard, too. There's going to be a lot of conditional stuff with this. We don't know specifically what's going to be required yet, so maybe his decreased defense is going to be useful, right? That multi-hitting decreased defense chance could end up being pretty good for it. That remains to be seen, but even at a legendary level, my god, we do not have many very good damage dealers, in all honesty, from this faction. Like, we have, you know, notable ones being Artak, of course, you know, Galek's father, if you're not familiar with the lore. And then after that, it kind of goes downhill pretty quick. Like, obviously, you have Supreme Galek, who's fantastic. Like, as you can see by his reviews, he's sensational. But apart from that, everyone else is, like, niche at best when it comes to damage dealing, right? Like, Bells can do some okay damage. You're probably not going to use him too many places, though. And everybody else is just kind of a disappointment. Varl's decent for Clan Boss as well, but it's going to be so long until you have, you know, Varl on your account. That being said, let's go ahead and do some interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and run our Galek inside the arena and see if we can actually get some wins using him. That would be pretty cool. So we're going to run the regular old speed team here. And then we're going to go ahead and substitute in Galek instead of our Sun Wukong. And this might be an interesting one because Sun Wukong was bringing in our 5-star Intimidating Presence, which we now no longer have. So you can kind of see the bonus of obviously having somebody that's not Galek in the team. And we get locked out, which is unfortunate. And we get insta-clap there. Wow. I think we will try something different here. So we'll get rid of this. We'll bring in Freya, because Freya will be able to proc and keep him alive, essentially. We'll bring in Hegemon just to essentially try to, you know, whack into them there. And then we'll bring, like, a Fabian. I think we're going to get locked out anyways, but Fabian has a very decent chance of cutting in here because of the Sifi buff. None of them had stone skin, so there's a very decent chance we can land stun. We get a decreased attack at the very least. And as you can see, Fabian does manage to cut in. We lock out their Yumiko, so she can't lock us out, and boom, we now get an instant turn effect on our Galek, but he was under a stun anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's try maybe a different team. You can see how tough it is in some situations to try and get away with, you know, pretty questionable team compositions, especially in the late game. There's definitely not as much fun to be had as there is in the early game, that's for certain. In the early game, I've noticed I have a secondary completely free-to-play account where, you know, things are a lot more exciting, so to speak, because, you know, in the arena, especially, I'm like a level 40 account on it. You can, and we get clapped. Oh, well. You can definitely mess around a little bit more, right? So you can run champions that you wouldn't normally run, and you don't really get punished for it because, you know, either the enemy team's just not strong enough to kill you anyways, or they're too slow, or whatever. So I'm running, like, Siege Hulk right now inside my arena team, and we're dead again, god damn it. Oh, this is unfortunate. Let's try this one more time. We're going to bring in our Hegemon pick again. Alright, I'm not really too worried about the fact that Hegemon is in the lead. It kind of is what it is. At least we'll get to go first now, and then hopefully lock them out. There we go. We get to block active skills on both the Arbiter as well as the Gurgo. And then our Yumiko is now fast enough to cut in. And there we go. Now our Lydia places decreased defense and weaken. And Galek doesn't get a turn anyways. Now, I'm not saying this would be different with, you know, any other rare champion. It certainly might not be, but the other rare champions, so if we look at Galek, he has 13-7 on the HP and 9-14 on the defense, right? If we look at, like, you know, some of the other ones, I think they're close or actually higher than him. So we have 14-3 on the HP coming in from Elhain here, right? And then 8-37 on defense. If we look at Kale, what are his base stats at? So he has 13-7 as well, so that's about the same, I believe. And then finally, if we look at the Sacred Order for El Aethel, almost said Elhain there, Aethel has like 13-5, so higher on the HP as well, right? Like, he's squishy. His damage isn't really that crazy. His kit is just absolutely terrible, especially in, you know, today's meta. I can't really see a, you know, a case for, you know, people to build him or to use him or those sorts of things. There are certainly harder hitting rares out there. There's definitely harder hitting epics, especially, you know, accessible ones that more people are going to be able to get. And personally, if you weren't an endgame player who was kind of bored in the game, I wouldn't recommend wasting your resources on Galek to build him. Would not recommend picking him as a starter. And I would certainly not recommend purchasing souls for him. But hey, if you got lucky and you just happen to pull a soul, here's kind of a showcase for you. Taking a look at Galek and some ridiculous stats and what he can do or what he can't do. That being said, thank you guys all so much for watching the video. As always, I'll see you next time.